Welcome back to our channel. On a fateful day in February 1986, a brutal crime shook the quiet neighborhood of Van Nuys, California. Sherri Rasmussen, a vibrant nursing director, was found murdered in her home. But what began as a botched burglary would unravel into a tale of jealousy, betrayal, and a decades-long quest for justice. February 24th, 1986. John Rutan returns home to find his garage door ajar. As he steps inside, his heart races. What he discovers is unimaginable. His wife, Sherri, lying lifeless on the living room floor. She had been beaten and shot 3 times in the chest. The scene was chaotic. Signs of a fierce struggle were evident. Broken furniture, defensive wounds on Sherri's body, and even a bite mark on her arm. Initially, investigators believed it was a robbery gone wrong. But was it? The only thing missing from the home was the Sherri's car, a BMW John had given her as an engagement gift, and their marriage license. The LAPD quickly ruled out John Rutan as a suspect. He had an alibi and was devastated by the loss of his wife. But as the investigation unfolded, questions arose about the nature of Sherri's death. According to one detective, it didn't add up. If it were a burglary, why were valuable items left behind? And why was Sherri targeted so violently? Sherri's family also had questions. They believed that this wasn't a simple burglary. Sherri's father suspected that it was murder, and he named 2 possible suspects. A disgruntled nurse that Sherri had worked with and John's ex-girlfriend whose name he never knew. According to him, the ex-lover had repeatedly shown up in front of Sherri before and after the couple had wed. More importantly, Sherri told her father that she was afraid Lazarus was stalking her. She even related that the ex-lover had threatened her at her workplace, saying, "If I can't have John, nobody can." However, despite repeated requests made to the police to conduct an investigation on these potential suspects, the authorities stuck to their burglary theory. As years passed without answers, the case went cold. Until 2001, when the LAPD launched the Cold Case Unit. More than 9,000 unsolved cases were assigned to the unit, including Sherri's murder. Cliff Shepard headed the investigation into the Rasmussen case and discovered that a bite swab had been collected. With new technology available, the detective thought it was possible to get a DNA profile from it. Unfortunately, the saliva sample seemed to be missing. It took several years for the swab to be tracked down. By 2004, the results were in. The DNA belonged to a woman. This revelation debunked the theory that Sherri was killed by an unidentified 2-man team in the middle of an attempted burglary. Unfortunately, the lead ended there. By 2005, the detectives in charge of the investigation moved on to other cases. No suspects were ever identified. In 2009, Detective Jim Nuttall from the Van Nuys division reopened Sherri's case. Nuttall discovered that aside from the perpetrator being a woman, there were several clues that indicated that the murder was staged as a burglary to throw the police off the trail. The crime was committed in broad daylight in the middle of a gated complex. Not a usual practice among burglars. Reconstructing the crime scene suggested that the perpetrator had confronted Sherri upstairs. She hadn't surprised them as she went down the stairs as the initial investigation suggested. In addition, a VCR and a CD player were stacked neatly at the top of the stairs where a struggle supposedly happened between Sherri and the killer. The detectives also found a thumb-shaped bloodstain on a record player that was placed on top of the stack, indicating that it was neatly put away after the murder. If it really was a burglar, why would he clean up a mess when he's already in a hurry to leave? More importantly, these are items that they typically steal. Not only did the burglar ignore these electronic devices, the jewelry box lying in plain view on top of the dresser was also left untouched. What kind of thief is this? That's not all. The killer used a quilt to muffle the sound of the gun as she shot Sherri at point-blank range. So, this act wasn't spontaneous at all. It seems more like it was premeditated. All of these points led the detectives to focusing on Sherri's personal life. What woman in Sherri's personal life wanted her dead and had the presence of mind to stage the crime scene, fooling the LAPD detectives assigned to the case? It turned out that there was one small mention of such a woman in the comprehensive murder book of Detective Mayer, the lead detective of the initial investigation, a then patrol officer named Stephanie Lazarus, an ex-lover of John, Sherri's husband. Stephanie had been in a tumultuous relationship with John before Sherri entered the picture. They started a casual relationship in college, but were not intimate until after graduation. The two slept together a number of times, though John never treated Stephanie as his girlfriend. When Stephanie learned of John's new relationship, she had a hard time letting go. She made her presence known to Sherri a number of times, and John even slept with Stephanie once, while already engaged to Sherri. This intimate act may have led Stephanie's infatuation with John to grow even stronger, causing her to feel jealousy and rage, which inevitably led to her actions that night. Unfortunately, with Stephanie belonging to the force, investigating her had to be done secretly. Though she was their prime suspect, they couldn't just interrogate her like usual. They could only discreetly inquire about her relationship with John decades before and catch her lies. As for her DNA, they had to collect it in secret from a cup Lazarus discarded. Fortunately, their efforts were not wasted. Stephanie's DNA matched the one collected from the crime scene. The evidence against Lazarus didn't stop there. 2.38 caliber bullets recovered from the crime scene were determined to be fired from a Smith & Wesson revolver, which was the same type of gun that Lazarus owned at the time. She had reported her firearm stolen shortly after the murder, raising suspicions about her involvement. The police also found journal entries and letters from Lazarus expressed her emotional turmoil regarding Rueten's marriage, suggesting a strong motive for her actions. In 2009, after more than 2 decades of evasion, Stephanie Lazarus was arrested for the murder of Sherri Rasmussen. In 2012, Lazarus stood trial for first-degree murder. Despite her claims of innocence and attempts to downplay her involvement, the evidence was overwhelming. Lazarus was convicted and sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. As discussions about parole for Lazarus arise, Sherri's family remains vigilant, determined not to let her memory fade into obscurity. Lazarus did eventually acknowledge that she killed Sherri at a parole hearing in 2023. However, according to Sherri's sister Connie, she never apologized for it. In fact, Lazarus even downplayed her actions, stating that she never meant to kill Sherri when she went to the Van Nuys condo that fateful day. Sherri Rasmussen's story is one of tragedy. It took more than 20 years for the authorities to find her killer, one that was literally staring them in the face. How is this possible? Could it be simply a case of being overwhelmed by too much crime in the city at the time? Or were they covering up for a fellow officer? What do you think? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more true crime content. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe.